Just take a minute. Look around you. There's history being made. Has been. Will be. How can there not? Just something about those blue skies, high banks, and high speed, all coming together in one perfect race. And it'll be here sooner than you think.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover, glad to welcome you back to our studios for what's going to be a very busy show, as we're going to be talking football, we're going to be talking basketball, really everything's starting to come together at this point of the season. We'll start going through our headlines for today, thanks to our friends at RJ Young. They've given us a smart board so we can interactively go through everything that's going on in Alabama athletics. And remember, RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. First of all, coming up on the show today, we'll go back to Knoxville. It was a tough Saturday night for Alabama, falling by 3 points to Tennessee, but we'll take a look at the booth cam highlights, get some perspective as well on what this game means for this Alabama season from Chris Stewart and Barrett Jones, who called the game for us. And then we'll have the coach's checklist with the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, giving his final thoughts on Tennessee, plus looking ahead to what's coming up with Mississippi State. Then we'll have a one-on-one conversation with Ja'Cory Brooks of the Alabama football team, as we have one-on-one conversations with a member of the Tide football team on each edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. And Ja'Cory's coming off a great performance where he had 6 catches and a touchdown against Tennessee. Then we'll have a live report from SEC basketball media days that are going on in Mountain Brook, Alabama, as we get closer to the start of basketball season, now less than 3 weeks away for Alabama men's and women's basketball. So media days report coming up in a bit, as well as a conversation with a Crimson Tide legend, Prince Wimbley, as we're going to be honoring the 1992 national champions coming up later this week against Mississippi State. We'll have a great conversation with Prince. And then we'll take a look back to last night's edition of Crimson Tide Rewind with our favorite segment, Be Kind, Crimson Tide Rewind, getting some thoughts from former Crimson Tide linebacker Corey Reamer on the Tennessee game and what's ahead with Mississippi State. Other headlines for today, the Crimson Tide football team, of course, the first loss of the season for Alabama against Tennessee, 52-49, the first loss to the Vols since 2006. So the 15-game winning streak comes to a close, but a chance to bounce back for Alabama coming up this Saturday against a very good Mississippi State team. That game will be at 6 o'clock inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. Our radio coverage will begin at 3, and it also is homecoming in Tuscaloosa, so a lot coming up on campus gearing up for the game. A lot coming up for the Alabama soccer team as well. Last Sunday had a great win against number 7 Arkansas. 2-1 was the final score. Jessica Skorka had a goal, and then after Arkansas had an equalizer, it was Ashlyn Sarepka scoring a penalty kick goal. That would be the difference in the win, as Alabama is now 14-1-1 overall this season, 7-0 in the SEC, and on Monday we learned the Crimson Tide soccer team now ranked number 1 in the nation. First time in school history that Alabama is ranked first in the nation in soccer. And coming up on Thursday, not only the game against Mississippi State, but we'll also have a one-on-one conversation with Crimson Tide head coach Wes Hart about what's been a dream season to this point for Alabama soccer. Some final notes around Crimson Tide athletics, as we mentioned, basketball media days coming up, and we'll have coverage not only on this edition of Crimson Drive, but also on Thursday as well. The volleyball team will be at home on Wednesday for the Power of Pink match against LSU. Women's golf trying to defend its title from the Alley tournament that they had last year. A great performance a year ago in that tournament by Benedetta Moresco. Then we have to say congratulations to Jay Batt, who has been one of the great associate athletic directors, deputy athletic director for Greg Byrne here at Alabama. He was named the Georgia Tech Director of Athletics this past Friday, so congratulations to Jay and all the best with the Yellow Jackets in Atlanta. But for us, next up on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, we're going to go back to Knoxville and bring you inside the broadcast booth as Chris Stewart was filling in for Eli Gold. Barrett Jones was filling in for John Parker Wilson, who will be back with us this week. But here's a look back at all the highlights from what turned out to be a dramatic finish in Knoxville.
Second down and 2 from the Volunteer 8-yard line. Young will hand it off. Gibbs trying to make a man miss. Gets to the edge. 10, 5, touchdown, Alabama.
There was an untouched Tennessee defender out in the left flat, and Jahmyr Gibbs just made him miss. His jockstrap still laying on the field there. Put a little juke move on him, hit the R2 button, and walked into the end zone.
Looking, scrambling, rolling now. Inside the 10, throws it, catches made. Brooks, did he hang on? Yeah! Touchdown, Alabama! Play action to him. Hooker looking to throw. Will give it off. Ball in the air. It is out of the hands of Henry To'o. Boy, he got hit as he was ready to make the interception, or otherwise Bama would have had it. Handoff, Gibbs up the middle, 20, 15, 10, 5 to the checkerboards. Touchdown, Alabama. 26 yards. Gets the snap. Young, looking, buying time, throwing, caught, back of the end zone. Good. Brooks, 2 points. Let's start over. We're tied at 28 with 11 to go in the third. I'm Chris Stewart filling in for Eli Gold. Barrett Jones filling in for John Parker Wilson. We're just a bunch of temps up here.
The replacements. We're like Shane Falco.
Here we go. Gets the snap at 3. Flush out of the pocket, goes to the right. Now he's looking, trying to make a man miss. Does. Throws. He's got a receiver. Catch made. Burton. What a play. Bryce Young finding Jermaine Burton for another bank first down. Looking, rolling to his right. Throwing. Latu is there. What a grab. Out of bounds near the 10-yard line. I don't know how in the world Christian Charles didn't get a pick or at least a deflection, let alone Latu making the grab. Dear Lord, what a play for Alabama again from the tight end slot. Clock at 5. Here's the snap. Handoff goes to Gibbs, actually left side. Foot race. He wins it. End zone. Touchdown, Alabama. And we are tied again. Stepping up in the pocket. He's going to throw. He's got a man. JoJo Earl, 20. JoJo 10. JoJo 5. First down, Alabama. The Tide back inside the Chick-fil-A red zone. Young. Dropping back, looking, stepping up, throwing, got him, touchdown, Latu! Alabama 2 within 1 from their own 16.
Ball's out!
On the deck, picked up Bama, touchdown, Dallas Turner, scoop and score, an assist from Barrett Jones as Alabama gets the takeaway and regains the lead. Wow!
Put the big uglies in right here. Let's get Jaheim Otis and DJ Dale in the middle right here, and they're about the quarterback sneak, and everybody in the stadium knows they got a quarterback that's really good at quarterback sneaks. Where's the beef? It needs to be right in the A-gaps. Put it in there.
Tell him, Clara.
Come on. But you know what? I guess if I'm going to immediately enter the spin zone, everything Alabama wants to accomplish is still in front of them. They win all the games in their schedule. They can still go to the SEC Championship.
Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR. Don't miss out on your chance to experience the Great American Race. Witness the stars of NASCAR leave it all on the track in hopes of becoming the winner of the 65th annual Daytona 500. Purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com.
After watching the film, this was kind of a collective loss by our team. I don't think we, played the way we wanted to play, for sure. We didn't execute the way we wanted to play. We had a few great individual performances. Guys played extremely well. But we also had some guys that it's our expectation that we need as coaches to try to help them get to where they can play better. There was too many things that we did in the game. 17 penalties is, just 130 yards of field position, probably lost about 70 yards of field position on special teams, whether it was a poor execution by a specialist or, the mistake we made on trying to pick the ball up when it wasn't a live ball. That's 200 yards in the game, so that's like 2 touchdowns probably. Gave up explosive plays on defense, which is something that we had done a good job of to that point of not doing. And, the last 5 plays of the game, we didn't execute. We can talk about running the ball, but we dropped the pass, clock would be running, and we would be closer. We miss a hot and don't run the route right, clock would be running, and we would be closer. So this is something that from the bottom up, all right? I'm talking about coaches, I'm talking about every player, I'm talking about me. We all got to do a better job to, help these guys learn from their mistakes, improve and get better. This is not the way you want to manage through a season by games coming down to the last play. And the things that you did up to that point, got the game to that point. So, we want guys to focus on, hey, have fun doing your job, have great energy and enthusiasm and intensity, and go out there and play the next play. Don't worry about results and the consequences of those results, because sometimes that creates anxiety, which sometimes doesn't lead to positive performance. So that's something that we need to improve on. Mississippi State's an outstanding team. I think they're 5-2. Mike Leach is one of the most difficult guys offensively to try to defend relative to their offense. The quarterback, Will Rogers, does a great job with that. They're one of the leading passing teams in the country. They've got a good receiving core. I think they're running the ball more effectively this year than maybe in years past. Their defense is very aggressive, create a lot of turnovers, do a lot of pressuring of the quarterback. They're good on special teams. They've got good specialists. So it's going to be a challenging game for us, and see how our players respond to the situation that we've created for ourselves. Look, Bryce is a competitor, and he's a great competitor, and he's a good leader on the team. And we need to do a better job of protecting him, and we certainly don't want him to get hit. Can we do that 100%? Sometimes he scrambles and runs and gets hit. But he's a competitor, and he's one of the guys that is a real warrior, on our team when it comes to doing whatever he needs to do to try to help the team win, whether it's scramble, sit in the pocket for the last minute and try to deliver a ball and maybe take a hit because of it. We don't want that to happen, and we need to do a better job so it doesn't happen. But can we eliminate it happening? And will he ever be a guy that doesn't do everything he can to help the team have a chance to be successful and help that play have a chance to be successful? I don't think so. I think that's why he is what he is. It's why he is a great player, because of that. So I don't know how to change that.
And as we continue on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, this is Roger Hoover, now pleased to be with you from the Grand Bohemian Hotel in Mountain Brook, Alabama, where over the next 2 days it'll be SEC Basketball Media Days, gearing up for the basketball season. Of course, on Crimson Drive, we'll continue talking football as we get ready for this Saturday, Alabama against Mississippi State in Tuscaloosa. And as always, we have one-on-one conversations with members of the Crimson Tide football team. And this week, that includes Ja'Cory Brooks, a wide receiver who caught 6 passes, including a touchdown against Tennessee. He looks back on his performance against the Volunteers and looks ahead to what's coming up this Saturday against the Bulldogs. First of all, Ja'Cory, 6 catches for you against Tennessee. It seemed like you and Bryce were in a good rhythm. How did it feel on the field?
It felt great. As an offense, we still haven't capitalized everything that we needed to do, but, we have to clean up some of our mistakes, that go for in practice. So, we just clean up some of our mistakes from last game so we can move on.
Obviously, Bryce was hurt in the Arkansas game, didn't play against Texas A&M, but what did you see from him during the week leading up to the Tennessee game, and just are you impressed how well he played considering the shoulder?
During the whole Tennessee week, he still was a leader. He still was there in practice, every play, every drive, helping out even Jaden Miro or Ty just from plays and what to read. And he was always there as a leader. He showed that he was going to play, whether he was going to play or not. I didn't know if he was going to play, so it was just like, no matter the situation, let's just go out and practice hard so we can win the game. That's all it was.
6 catches against Tennessee, including a touchdown. What do you remember about the touchdown? How'd you get open? How'd you score?
I can just remember the play call. I ran my route, and I seen Bryce scrambling after that, and I started rolling out with him. He seen me, and I seen the ball, so I just had to make the catch. That's all.
Certainly glad you did. How have you seen some of the younger wide receivers continue to learn, continue to get better as the season's gone along?
Yeah, all of our young wide receivers are getting better. They starting to get in the playbook more. They're starting to feel comfortable out there. I'm starting to see some of them with their swag. So I feel like they're getting along with the game pretty well.
You excited to be back at Bryant-Denny Stadium, especially under lights coming up this week?
Yes, sir. We have to got to get back on our roll now. That we got to take this whole week of practice serious, even though we've been taking it serious before, but it's more focused now, and we just got to come up with this win this weekend.
We look forward to it. Ja'Cory Brooks, thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Just take a minute. Look around you. There's history being made. Has been, will be. And it'll be here sooner than you think.
And welcome back to Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Now we're live with you from Mountain Brook, Alabama at the Grand Bohemian Hotel as we get ready for SEC Basketball Media Days. Roger Hoover, pleased to be joined by our basketball analyst, Richard Hendrix, as we start talking about women's basketball today, men's basketball tomorrow. Richard, it's exciting here in mid-October to talk some basketball, right?
It's always exciting to talk a little basketball, and it's a great environment here at the SEC Media Days.
Well, we're certainly excited, first of all, on this Tuesday that the women's basketball team got to go through everything with Media Days here in Birmingham. What'd you like about what you heard from Christy Curry and the players as they get ready for this year?
Well, I'm very excited to see what this team can do, as she's spoken so much about this team trying to gel and come together and blend. They have a lot of returning players, actually 95% of their scoring, but they have 6 newcomers on the roster. They have high expectations. I want to see how it all comes together.
And the players that are coming back played at such a high level last year, especially when the rotation, it seemed like, got a little shorter. And that's when we saw some great basketball in the SEC tournament and then the women's NIT.
Brittany Davis, Megan Abrams, Jemiah Mingo-Young. I will look for them to continue to do what they did last year at the end of the season when Alabama won 7 of its last 10 games, made a deep run in the WNIT tournament to the quarterfinals, and won 2 games in the SEC tournament. So it's going to be good to see what they can do and also what the newcomers can do on this roster.
Yeah, a lot of talented newcomers coming in. As Coach Curry said, I believe 9 players started D1 basketball a season ago, so that's a lot to blend on this roster.
It's definitely a lot to blend, but as you heard her say earlier, it's good to have depth. And I think when you're a coach, it's always better to have more than less, but it's going to be one of those situations where she'll have to figure out what lineup is going to be best at particular times, how she can utilize this very versatile and very tenacious roster that she has, which fits the personality like she likes to lead the team with.
One player we got to see in the SEC was Sarah Ashley Barker, of course, the daughter of former Crimson Tide quarterback Jay Barker, and she played really well at Georgia. Now she gets to come home and play for Alabama, and everyone's excited about that.
It's exciting to see a hometown player come back to the school that she grew up watching. She's a very strong player, athletic, smart player, and can do a lot of things on the court. Alabama will be able to utilize her skill set to try to get to the next level.
Also earlier today, the women's basketball preseason poll was announced. Alabama preseason picked 10th. South Carolina was picked to win the league. Just any surprise there seeing where Alabama fell in the preseason poll?
To me, I believe so, yes. I think 10 is a little bit too low. When you have a team that is returning 95% of the scoring, that did make a deep run into the postseason play in the SEC tournament and in the WNIT, have many players returning as well as some newcomers, I would think that the voters would probably take all of that continuity and rank them a little bit higher. But, you know, it's a young season. You see a lot of teams getting a lot of new players in the transfer portal. You never know what can happen, but I do think the teams that can get it together earliest have a better chance of doing better.
Well, again, women's basketball takes center stage on this Tuesday. Coming up on Wednesday, it'll be men's basketball having their day here at the Grand Bohemian Hotel, and that includes the Alabama Crimson Tide, and head coach Nate Oates once again has a really talented roster, already preseason number 20 in the nation coming in this year.
Well, they have high expectations, and that's because head coach Nate Oates has set the bar really, really high for Alabama basketball. Unlike with the women's team, they have a lot of newcomers on the team throughout the entire roster. They're losing a lot of players from last season, Jaden Shackelford, Keon Ellis. You're losing to the Boston Celtics. You're losing J.D. Davison being the 52nd overall pick in the NBA draft. So you're losing a lot of continuity and star power from last year's team, but a lot of talented newcomers coming to this roster.
And who are you most excited to see among the newcomers?
Probably Brandon Miller. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's 6'9". He has guard skills. He's versatile on the perimeter. He can go inside and rebound. If he can be the player that people are expecting to see, then Alabama can be something to reckon with.
We look forward to seeing the Crimson Tide this year. How about just globally, kind of looking at the SEC? Is Kentucky the team to beat?
I would believe so. When you get the reigning National Player of the Year with Oscar Tshiebwe returning to your roster, I think you definitely have to be the favorite. Kentucky had a really good season last year. They fizzled out in the NCAA tournament, getting upset by St. Peter's in the first round, a historic upset for the Wildcats. They have to be hungry. I'm sure Coach John Calipari will have his team ready.
Are you ready to go for more SEC Network Plus broadcast and then joining us some here on Crimson Drive throughout the season?
Absolutely. Anytime I can team up with Roger Hoover and get on some more broadcasts with SEC Network Plus and here on Crimson Drive, it's always an honor.
We look forward to it, Richard. Thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Thank you for having me.
Prince, Roll Tide. How's everything going? Are you excited to come back to Bryant-Denny Stadium this upcoming Saturday?
Of course. I'm always excited to come back to see former teammates and be in the atmosphere of the Tide.
Well, let's go back to 1992 for a moment, as you were a great wide receiver from 89 to 92. Just what led to that being a really special season? What kind of work went in to making sure that became a championship?
Well, if you go 1 year prior in 1991, we only lost one game. But essentially, they didn't have a SEC championship game, and we lost to Florida that year. So if we would have had a championship game in '91, we would have played Florida for a rematch to play for the national championship. But coincidentally, in 1992, we didn't want to have a SEC championship game because we were undefeated, and we had to play Florida. That was a high-powered offense. And as you can see, it went down to the last minute. But we learned a lot from the 91 team, how to prepare and leadership. We had a lot of senior leadership in the 92 team that made us successful. We had a lot of guys that had been there and done there. Then we added a young recruiting class that had a lot of talent 2 years prior with David Palmer, Sherman Williams, Andre Royal. The list goes on, Damon Jeffries, that had added to the mix of seniors like myself, George T, Copeland Curry, Derek Lassick, so we had a good core of players.
And of course, you were one of the team captains of that group. Do you remember some of the moments where you had to step up and be a vocal leader for that Alabama team?
I want to say the Mississippi State game, we were leading the entire game until the third quarter. Then I think Mississippi State came back. They surged. They took the lead. And then at that moment, I felt the need to say something to our defense. So I just went over and talked to Copeland and Curry and Derek Oden and those guys and say, listen, this game right here, if we lose this game, we're not going to play for the national championship. All the hard work that we put in throughout the summer, it all weighs on this one particular game at this moment right now. We need to make something happen. And it was a 3rd and 15, I think 3rd and 20. Jay threw me a post corner. It was very critical. I made the catch. Derek Lassick goes in the next play and scores. And then our defense came on the field. They were fired up. I guess they listened to what I was saying, and George Teague made an interception, and we kind of just closed the game out. But that was very critical in the '92 season, that Mississippi State game. And I felt like I need to say something.
Yeah, and it certainly was, and we're glad we're getting to honor you guys of Mississippi State coming up back in town coming up this Saturday. Not only you a vocal leader on that team, but just overall, Coach Stallings, what was it like to play for him, and how would he guide you guys week to week throughout the season?
Coach Stallings, it was a great mentor. Everything that we learned that season was predicated on what he taught us. He was a great man of ethics. He made sure we worked hard. He made sure we didn't take anything for granted. And it all started as soon as you walked on that field. And when you walked off the field, he wanted us to be a good citizens too, as well. So it was a great mix of, just being a good person and hard work. And we just went out there and did what we had to do and followed his lead.
And it led all the way to New Orleans to the Sugar Bowl for a national championship game against Miami. Just what do you remember the most from that night? As I know, offensively, at times, maybe we've heard from Jay Barker saying he didn't throw for as much as he would have liked to in that ball game, but Alabama made enough plays to win the ball game and ultimately win the national championship.
It's funny you say that. Yes, Jay, we didn't throw that much that game. Just to bring you back to that moment, I caught 2 passes for like 19 yards, and I led the team in receptions on that particular game. So, no, just me being from Miami, Florida, growing up in Dade County, I had a lot of those guys that were on the University of Miami's team that I grew up with or playing against in Pee Wee ball all the way through high school, and they were very vocal. They took us for granted. They just assumed by them walking out on the field that they were going to win the game. But not knowing what I knew, we had a lot of talent on that team. And we wanted to bring back that Alabama pride. We hadn't won a championship since '79. So we had a lot weighing on our shoulders, but we were prepared for it. And I think they underestimated all the talent that we had. But it was a great atmosphere. Of course, our fans brought us through. Our scout team did a tremendous job all week getting us prepared. They don't get enough credit, our scout team players, but they prepared us very well for that game. And we just went out there and executed.
Certainly did, winning the 1992 national championship. And you mentioned it had been the first national championship since 1979 for Alabama. So I imagine you had to know what that meant to everybody in this state and all Alabama fans to have that championship. And as it turned out, it would be the final national championship until 2009.
Oh man, it was just great atmosphere. I think in 91, I think we thought we had a shot at it, like I was saying, but in 92, we really knew going into the season, we had a lot of talent coming back, and our main goal was the national championship or bust. So for all that to come into fruition and us win it against my hometown, with a lot of players on that team that I grew up with, it was something special for me and for our team and for the whole state of Alabama.
Well, Prince, we can't wait to have you back in Tuscaloosa as an honorary captain coming up on Saturday. Before we let you go, what can you tell the fans that you're up to these days?
I work for Alabama Central Credit Union. I'm a dealer rep, so I deal with a lot of car dealerships throughout the state of Alabama, financing and just mending that gap, being a liaison between my credit union and in particular car dealerships. And also, me and my wife, we have our business. It's Wimbley's 32 Below. We serve soft serve ice cream, lemonade, and shaved ice. And we do a lot at the Briarwood High School football games, particularly mainly on Friday nights for all their home games.
Well, that certainly sounds good. Well, Prince Wimbley, we can't wait to have you back in town coming up this weekend. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Thank you for having me.
Great to catch up with Prince Wimbley. Can't wait to honor the 1992 national champions coming up this Saturday against Mississippi State. On Monday nights, of course, here in the Birmingham area in Vestavia Hills, we always have Crimson Tide Rewind at Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, as we're joined by former Crimson Tide linebacker Corey Reamer, as well as a lot of Alabama fans who will make their presence known coming up in this edition of Be Kind Crimson Tide Rewind, as we had an interesting chat looking back at the Tennessee game, starting to get ready a little bit for Mississippi State as well, but penalties were a big talking point, and you'll see that even coming up in this rewind of last night's Crimson Tide Rewind. Again, we love to call this segment Be Kind Crimson Tide Rewind. This game had as many twists and turns as you can possibly have.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at just from a 30,000 foot perspective, you didn't have much hope after that first quarter. I mean, there was a lot of things that went wrong. You get a penalty on the very first play of the game, and backs our offense up, goes 3 and out. Tennessee scores on their first drive, and then we turn around and answer, tie it up 7-7, and then things kind of got away from us there for the rest of that quarter, and it looked pretty dire. There was a lot of things that didn't go our way, and they were executing at an extremely high level. It was a question of whether or not we were ever going to get a stop on defense.
We ended up seeing him. He threw 35 of 52 passing, 455 yards, 2 touchdowns, and looked really sharp.
Yeah, I mean, if there was ever a question going into this game about the health of Bryce Young, he cleared the air pretty early, and he played probably, I would say, one of his most complete, best football games that we've seen in his entire career. And he's going up against Hendon Hooker, who also had a great game, but I think that he silenced all the questions of what that shoulder is going to look like. And if it wasn't for Bryce, I don't even think we have a chance to be in this ball game. He made plays all night with his feet, scrambling, keeping plays alive, finding open guys downfield when it looked like he was dead to rights. I mean, even close when we were in the red zone, I can't remember when it was, looked like he was about to try to run it up the gut and pulls 2 defenders off of a receiver, and he finds the open guy to complete pass and score a touchdown. He played, you can't say enough about him. You can tell he's just the ultimate competitor. And you look at one of the things in the box score that you can't accept every single week is the amount of penalties. That was definitely the key to this ball game. 17 penalties versus 6. Yeah. Here comes
fans at the restaurant throwing flags.
Flags coming at us everywhere. They got the referees
already
on.
Too. Wow.
I think there's definitely some people that aren't very happy with the number, and I definitely have heard it for the last couple of days. Of how
17 now, so I'm getting hit in the head with him. I feel like I'm back on the field in Knoxville.
I mean, it was a. But you look at, and I think that was one of the biggest issues was coming into this game is people just don't expect Alabama teams to have the number of penalties that we've had. And I think even though this year has been we've been doing it every single game. We set a record for Alabama against Texas with 15 penalties, and then you turn around and you play Tennessee and you got 17 penalties, and it's just not a way that you're going to get winning football. It's not a way that you're going to be able to go out there and compete. Now, some of them are questionable, yes, absolutely, and I think there's some that were probably missed or that we would have liked to have seen called on the other side, but you can't get you can't really put the blame on the refs. There's still flags flying around everywhere.
I know, yeah. Right.
I mean, how are you supposed to do a show with yellow flags flying all over the place?
Again, that's how we felt Saturday.
Exactly. I mean, and it really broke what it's done to us is broke the momentum of what this segment is, and it's exactly what it did on Saturday.
I'm just glad we have highlighter yellow instead of orange.
Yeah, and these are light. These don't hurt too bad.
No.
But yeah, it's definitely unacceptable, and I know Coach Saban's frustrated with it. There weren't as many of self-inflicted penalties as we had, but you talk about the very first play of the game, you got a penalty on the opening kickoff, and it backs the offense up inside the 20-yard line, starting at Tennessee in a hostile environment, and it was one of the loudest games that we've ever been a part of. I wasn't there, but what you said and everybody that I've talked to has talked about how loud it was. You're just putting yourself in bad position just right from the jump street. And you can't have those things happen, and they're drive killers or drive extenders if you're committing them on defense. The pass interference calls that, there was some that were called, some that weren't, and it just felt like another game. And the expectations are for us to play more disciplined than we have through the first 7 games of this season. And it's just unlike Alabama to go out there to commit this many penalties. And Coach Saban talked about it. We've got to fix this. This is definitely a problem. It's just going to take some discipline or some changes in personnel to eliminate those things if people can't get it corrected.
We can't wait to see all the fans inside Bryant-Denny Stadium under the lights coming up this Saturday. 6 o'clock kickoff. Our coverage on the radio will begin at 3 o'clock for Alabama against Mississippi State in a game that can be considered a rivalry, obviously close geographically. So many meetings between these schools over the years. And again, Alabama has played some really good football of late against Bulldogs.
Yeah, they have. And we got to continue. We got to bounce back from this one. And Mike Leach, he's watching this Tennessee tape very closely to figure out what it was exactly that's given us all kinds of fits from a defensive side of the football. And he's a guy that doesn't like to run the football. He loves to throw it. So he's going to be trying to attack us in the same way. And he's got a very capable quarterback in Will Rogers as well. I mean, this guy's been one of the top passing quarterbacks in the SEC for a couple years since he's been there. And they've had a lot of success on the offensive side of the football so far. And he's going to have some stuff dialed up. They're coming off a loss, as well, this past weekend against Kentucky. And it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. Mississippi State's just one of those teams that is high-powered of an offense as they are. They're just one of those that loves to play in the trenches too, especially from a defensive side of the ball. They're very physical. They like to get after quarterbacks, and they're very athletic. And there's a lot of guys that are on that roster who are natives of this state. And so this game means a lot to a lot of people that play at Mississippi State. So expect them to come in ready to go, coming off a loss as well, see how both teams bounce back. It should be a good football game.
Again, thanks to those Alabama fans that brought their own penalty flags to Baumhower's last night and made it a really fun atmosphere as we start to look forward to what's coming up for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And that means it's time for a Wickles Weekend Update brought to you by Wickles Pickles. They're wickedly delicious. Find out more at wickles.com. Here's what's coming up on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Once again, on Thursday, we'll have another edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR at 2 p.m. on all of our social media channels. And then coming up later that night at 6:30, it'll be Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa as we get Coach Saban's final word of the week, getting ready for Saturday in Mississippi State. Friday, of course, we'll have the This Week on CTSN podcast, taking a look at all the best of our content throughout the week in an easy 10-minute podcast format that I think you'll really enjoy, especially if you're making your way to Tuscaloosa for the game on Saturday. It is a little bit of a later start, 6 o'clock, so once again we get to play football under the lights at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Our radio coverage will begin at 3 o'clock across the radio network, and we look forward to Alabama against Mississippi State as the Crimson Tide looks to pick up a really key win in the battle for the SEC West. Then coming up on Sunday, we'll take a look back at the ball game with the Nick Saban television show, as well as Tide TV This Week, taking a look at all of Alabama athletics, and then next Monday night, back at it again for Crimson Tide Rewind at 6 p.m. at Baumhower's Victory Grill. Crimson Drive is driven by NASCAR. Don't miss out on your chance to experience the Great American Race. Witness the stars of NASCAR leave it all on the track in hopes of becoming the winner of the 65th annual Daytona 500. Purchase your tickets today at DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com. Well, it's going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. We've been on location for most of the show from Mountain Brook, Alabama at the Grand Bohemian Hotel with some interviews around SEC basketball media days, and coming up during Alabama football's bye week, we'll have some of those conversations with head coach Christy Curry, as well as a couple of players from the women's basketball team, head coach Nate Oates, as well as some members of the men's basketball team, as the basketball season is getting closer and closer on November 7th. Fun event here in the Birmingham area to start getting ready for basketball. But we'll keep getting ready for football as well this week. Coming up again on Thursday at 2 o'clock, we'll have another edition of Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. Special thanks to Prince Wimbley for joining us, along with Corey Brooks, as well as Corey Reamer for his great insight from last night's edition of Crimson Tide Rewind. Thanks to Richard Hendrix for joining us here in Mountain Brook for this coverage of SEC basketball media days. A great insight from Richard. Can't wait to see him once again on the SEC Network coming up this year. Thanks as well to our video producer Ethan Caravan for shooting, editing, putting all of this show together. Really appreciate his hard work getting you prepared for Crimson Drive driven by NASCAR. For everybody with the Crimson Tide Sports Network, this is Roger Hoover saying thank you for watching on this Tuesday afternoon, and Roll Tide.